winner. 32-160 for Henry Bennett. Wagner's there again with a 174. 183 Rick Ravon, Eric Schaus. Was a 185, so there's only 0.02 of a second there for P4, P5. 1/100th of a second back to Nick DeGroot. Covey Moore is right there as well. Again, another 100th of a second. The field is so compact. I mean, you know, when we look back to the one race that I actually have had the pleasure of broadcasting within the Dark Horse League, the Indy 500, the race was exactly that. So the competitiveness has gone absolutely nowhere in terms of where things are, and I know for a fact that some of these drivers are really chomping at the bit to get going tonight.
We've got our two former champions, one defending and one from 2 seasons ago, in the field here tonight. Drivers that finished first and third in the overall points last season. Of course, as we mentioned, Robert Maleska III, the defending champion, Nick DeGroot, the champion back in season 2. And Maleska, it was, you know, for both of those drivers during the course of those 2 seasons, it really was a dominating performance. Nick DeGroot went to victory lane, I believe it was a total of 5 times back in season 2. And Robert Maleska III, of course, was absolutely dominant. 11 trips to victory lane in last season's schedule. So you have to wonder if it's going to come down between those two again. We've got some drivers in the field here tonight and obviously down the course of the season that we know are going to have the speed and the pace to make it a good fight with those two? Or is there a driver that maybe emerges up here and becomes a dominator like we've had in the past 2 seasons that maybe we haven't seen run a full season schedule yet?
I mean, potentially, you know, any single time that you do run a new season, you kick off a new season, it's a big invite. You know, maybe there's a driver towards the back end of last season that we didn't sort of really assess correctly. Maybe there was somebody there that was ultimately the mindset that I go with whenever I'm joining a new league and starting a new season is I'll join the previous season a couple weeks before the end, and all I want to do is just build some reputation as this really, really clean driver, somebody who's nice and easy to drive around. Yeah, I might be a little bit more forgiving then. Start of a new season, all of that goes up another notch. All of a sudden, I'm in the point standings. I'm trying to push for my own sort of recognition and respect from the other drivers around me. I built that relationship. I've done all the work that I needed to do in the last season, that little bit of a reputation that you sometimes need. So, any of those drivers that were there in the tail end of last season now have that opportunity to push a little bit harder. Do I think that that's going to mean that we're going to get chaos in the opening laps? Yes and no. I think it could lead to a little bit of chaos, but that's part and parcel as well of a new season. The tables have been reset. The strongest drivers are going to again got to come to the fore and really show off their talents and show off their wares. So, look, I think we're in for an exciting race tonight, and the benefit is that it's for who leads the championship, guaranteed. There is. You don't win the race tonight, you're not leading the championship after tonight.
Like we're having a little bit of trouble with our ticker here, folks, so I'm just going to run down the starting grid for tonight's event. 22 drivers going to take the green flag for this 100-lapper in the Troy Lee Designs 200. Robert Maleska III, who finished third here at Michigan 1 season ago, he'll be the pole sitter alongside of Henry Bennett. Matt Wagner, who led the most laps here a season ago, he'll be on the inside of row 2 alongside of Rick Ravon. We saw him have a good performance back in the Indy 500 last season. Eric Schaus, he'll be alongside of Nick DeGroot, the defending winner of this race in row 3. Covey Moore and Jim Herrick in row 4 with Charles Teed and Charles Johnson making up the top 10. Polo Hernandez, he was up front quite a bit in his debut in the Indy 500 at the end of last season. He's 11th alongside of Eric Peterson. Benjamin Combs and Dylan Moskowitz back in row 7. 15th place going to be Jeff Hysong alongside of Gail Brooks, Bronson Stafford and Jim Brooks in row 9. Row 10 finds Mike Tellier and Joe Agee, and then Jeffrey Duncan and Nicholas Wanook. They're going to bring up the final row as they're going to come down here and get ready to get the 4th season of the Dark Horse IndyCar Series underway. Maleska through the gears and the green flag waves on the season.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal start for Maleska. He got a really, really good jump, and he's going to be out there and lead him away. Interesting to note that instead of Henry Bennett getting off nice and cleanly in behind him, which I think he's actually managed to grab that position now. Actually, sorry, no, it's Matt Wagner who's jumped ahead. So, interesting to see that Wagner's got a phenomenal start, and he's going to be, again, aggressive and trying to push his car to the fore.
Last season, we saw Matt Wagner in the 99, the very familiar powder blue color on his machine, now donning the red and white on the number 11, as he's going to go to the point. Led 52 of the 100 laps here one season ago, but he was not able to follow up with the victory. Actually ran into some trouble late and finished that race all the way back in the 15th position. I believe he finished first car one lap down. So he's looking for a little bit of Michigan redemption here tonight. A little bit of a block there on Rick Ravone as he goes to the inside of Nick DeGroot to take the race lead back.
Yeah, that's it. And everyone's just sort of settling down in and really trying to find their aero lines. Where do they want to be running? Do they want that high line? Do they want to maintain that momentum? Oh, look at that move there from Rick Ravone to come up and take the air away from Henry Bennett. Sorry, was that Henry Bennett? I believe it was Nick DeGroot there on the outside line. That was phenomenal. There was nothing in that. And that is a really good sign of a lot of trust, a lot of respect between these drivers. They know exactly the limits of their cars and where their nearest rivals are. Look at that chain of four strong on the outside.
And 3 wide going into 3. DeGroot to the bottom, Wagner to the middle, and Ravon stuck on the top side. Now it's Wagner and DeGroot side by side for lead off of 4. Mention the fact that Nick DeGroot's the defending winner of this race. We do have the other previous winner back in Season 2 in the field. He's that cyan-colored machine there on the top side, the 15 of Covey Moore.
Yeah, what a good run from Covey as well. Originally starting his machine down over in 7th place. He's managed to attach himself not only to this lead pack, but actually put his car quite deeply within these guys. So keep an eye on him tonight as the race progresses.
Reed Bennett going to make it 3 wide with DeGroot put in the middle, and that's Covey Moore up on the top side as Wagner trying to hold off Ravon for the top position. 6 drivers have broken away in this lead group. Then you got a second group back there. Actually, Lone Island for Eric Schaus. Then you get back to Group 2, led by Dylan Moskowitz, Charles Teed and company.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see multiple packs forming that early on. Ultimately, what I think happened was that Robert Maleshka actually got away a little bit aggressively, nice and early on. Very good run for him. But ultimately, what he's done is he's gimped himself in terms of the aero. What he's done is he's gotten too far out, and then the aero has just pulled him back. He's lost a lot of momentum. He's building himself back up. I think what he's actually done right now is settled back in. I'm not 100% sure how this second pack is formed, though, because that first pack just got such a phenomenal start. I'm thinking it's something to do with that. It's just a lot more comfortable. But it looks like we got nearly the entire field as a part of this second pack.
Looking at Dylan Moskowitz now leading group number 2. He's picked up the most spots since the drop of the green flag. Started 14th up to 7th, so up 7 spots. The driver that's dropping towards the back, that'd be Charles Johnson. Started this race up in the 10th position, has now fallen back to the tail end of the top 15.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like I said, this second sort of pack, there's a lot of hustling, bustling guys that maybe not necessarily had a strong qualifying attempt. They're really looking for their opportunity to move through the field slowly and just start picking off cars left, right, and center. Ultimately, Charles might be just setting himself up for a really, really good race towards the tail end of things tonight. He needs to look after that car. He needs to give himself the aero package, and he needs to make sure that this car is clean, 90 laps from now when that race is going to be decided.
Now, obviously, our statistics are not really going to bring about the number of lead changes that we actually had here tonight. It only counts the lead changes when they get back to the start-finish line. I mean, we're seeing the lead get exchanged 2, maybe 3 times during the course of a lap. Last season, we only had 7 drivers out in front, but 19 lead changes. I wonder if we're going to break that here tonight. As obviously we've got some fast cars here up at the front, and I'm looking at some of these guys back here in that second group as well. Eric Schaus, I know that he's really good at the speedways. Jim Herrick back there as well. We've also got some new names in the field here this season, like Bronson Stafford and Mike Tellier. We know that when they get into DW12 car, that they're pretty fast. So, obviously we're going to be seeing them up here towards the end. I have a feeling we're going to definitely break at least the 19 lead change, and I think we might also break the 7 drivers that led last season as well.
I agree with that. Just looking at the number of bubbles around the lead changes already. I mean, have a look at Robert. He's dropped a long way back within terms of the pack. Again, I think race management is really the crucial factor for him. I'm actually having a look at Charles Teed and Dylan Moskowitz in that second group, because right now that second group's actually coming back to the leaders. I thought initially that it was just going to be a little bit all over, all done, and we're going to end up with 2 race groups in the entire race. No, not the case. That second group's actually catching the leaders.
And then you see the red McDonald's machine. That is Polo Hernandez. Led 63 of the 200, well, actually it was 203 laps, but the 200 lapper at Indianapolis in the season finale. He went on to finish 7th place in that as well. That was his debut here in the Dark Horse IndyCar Series, now running full time, and That car making it 3 wide. That's Charles Teed, last year's Iowa winner, putting Dylan Moskowitz in the middle. These guys up here in this second group, while they are slowly, by maybe thousands, reeling in that lead pack, it's the case of you've got that momentum, you've got to take it somewhere. You can't lift off the throttle, because if you do, it's such a momentum-based car and momentum-based track, you're going to lose spots if you lift off of that accelerator.
Yeah, very big. I mean, these drivers aren't going to touch really the brakes at all. Even coming towards the back end of a tire run, they're still going to be able to hold most of their momentum. You can roll out of the throttle a little bit. If you're looking to hold that high line, you are trying to prioritize all that momentum. You're trying to keep that momentum up. You're trying to scrub the tires as little as possible. That low line is going to put a lot of load through those front tires. IndyCars handle it a fair bit better than the NASCARs do. They're obviously a fair bit lighter, but they do run a fair bit faster and a fair bit lower to the ground. So a few differences there in the way that they think. But have a look at the ability to pass, the ability to run multi-car wide. You need to set up your momentum. You need to set up that run. You need to sit in the area of a couple cars for 2 corners, make sure that you get that huge run, plan your assault. If you just go up there with no plan, no idea, you're going to sort of lose your run about halfway through making up all the positions that you really want. You're actually going to slide backwards. So these guys are going to have to use their heads all night long here.
13 laps on the board, 12 completed. We were watching that battle back there again for the lead of that second group. The 18 of Jeff Heisong popped up into the picture. Heisong finished top 5, 5th place here at Michigan 1 season ago, as Wagner and Kobe Moore continued to battle for the top spot. And Rayvon thought about going to the inside, then tried the top side, but Henry Bennett was there, and that's something these drivers are going to have to be careful of as well. The runs that you get, they happen so quickly, and you really can't block with these cars because of the fact that that car that's got to run is going to have such a huge closing rate, so it's kind of a block at your own risk, and we saw obviously last season, not only here at Michigan, but at Auto Club as well. That's what led to some late race yellows, was the inability to be able to judge just how much of a run that car was getting on you.
It's more than that as well. The yellow may not necessarily be caused directly by the block, but it'll be caused indirectly by the block. It's not just the car that's getting the run that's coming up to you. It's the car behind them is following them in their area, and they're obviously getting a huge momentum build on you. And all of a sudden, they've got to run on the car in front of them. That car's got to run on you. It's a real domino kind of effect. You make one block, it's not just one car you're affecting. It's multiple cars, and you've really got to make sure that you provide... You've got to make the block early, but if you make the block early, you're so easy to adjust and adapt to and really find that. It makes for great racing, lots and lots of overtaking, really using your head, and ultimately what we're actually seeing as a part of that is we're seeing a lot of drivers actually just run towards the back of the packs. Take a look at Robert Maleska, because right now he's just sitting off the tail end of that lead pack. He's just watching, he's just taking a read of these guys. I think this is the smartest thing that he can do. He's a series winner, right? He's won a championship. He's won how many races last season? 11 or so, I think. So the guy clearly knows what he's doing, and right now he's using his head. He's going, I don't need to be aggressive. I'm going to look after a little bit of tire. I'm going to look after a lot of fuel, and I'm just going to make a read on these guys. And when I make my move, it is going to be a big move, a decisive move, and it's probably going to win in the race.
Henry Bennett's going to move to the point. Last year's runner-up in the Indianapolis 500 to Matt Wagner, and trying to start out the season here with a trip to victory lane. Kobe Moore going to move into second place. I'm watching these guys take turns out in front, and it's very difficult to be able to kind of gauge who's led the most laps so far, been able to get that clean air, but at the same time use up fuel, because we were told that it's around maybe 29, possibly 30 laps these drivers can stretch it if they're in draft. Obviously, the fuel consumption is going to be a lot greater when you're out in front, not having the benefit of the slipstream, the benefit of the draft, that car in front of you. So I'm looking at guys like Matt Wagner and Kobe Moore, who spent quite a good portion of these first 18 laps out in front. They might be some of our first ones to duck onto pit road in the next 10, 11 laps or so.
Of course, pit lane strategy is going to reflect tonight. You need to go with a drafting partner. There's no way that you can go to pit road on your own. And ultimately, if you're not going to pit road in a group of 3 cars at least, you're probably going to suffer as a result of that. I'm expecting this race to get broken down into quarters. Maybe in the first one, you're going to run a little bit longer. Maybe you are targeting that lap 29, lap 30. You're looking for that caution to really grab the edge. Everyone who's going to come in, make that stop, they're going to be on pit road for a little bit of time. They're going to lose a lot of time, and there's a potential for them to go a lap down. If you're just that little bit later than everyone else in those first couple rounds, again, remembering that rule, go to pit lane with 3 cars, you could find yourself in the ascendancy just purely through the way that the cautions work. And I think, keep your eye, again, I'm going to mention Robert Maleska a lot tonight because I think that's exactly what he's targeting. He's like, I don't need to lead this race early. None of that is my concern. I only need to lead one lap. That lap is the last lap. That's the important one.
Maleska only led 19 laps here 1 year ago en route to a third-place finish. It was actually one of the few races as well that Robert Maleska III did not put down a qualifying lap. Started towards the back in the 17th position in that race. A bit of a rarity to not see him start at least up inside of the top 5 last season. These guys back here in the second group, this is where all the fun is, because up at the front, yeah, we've got some side-by-side battles for the lead, 3rd, 5th place, but they are taking it 3 wide in certain portions of the field, sometimes in 2 places in this group, into these corners, and almost there, a little bit of contact. I'm not certain who that was that blue car in the middle, but he had to back off because there was almost a little bit of contact there coming off of turn 4.
Yeah, so, again, same sort of rules apply. Originally, these guys were actually starting to catch up because they were getting the momentum. Now it looks like there's actually kind of like a semi-breakaway pack at the top 4 of this sort of group. They're starting to single file out up front here, and that's maintaining their momentum, and it's going to give them the opportunity to certainly go back and have a crack at trying to get onto the tail end of this lead group. The guys that are fighting all the way back there, whilst ever you're fighting, you're losing time. You're sacrificing your momentum. You're using up a little bit more tire than you really want to. You can't make an overtake if you're not turning that fuel gauge all the way up. So, those guys are basically taking their options right now and throwing them away. They're going to compromise themselves in terms of that late race strategy, and you're going to have to look at how that develops. I'm really worried, though, for Charles Teed, because he has led a lot of laps out front of this group right now, and nobody else seems to really want to take that over.
Right now, holding the 7th position is Teed, as Henry Bennett gets around Rick Ravon. He'll go back to the point in this group of 6. We'll drop back again here to this second pack that continues to go double wide and on occasion 3 wide. We're closing on that fuel window. Now, I mentioned at the top of the program that these drivers, they're coming into this race with a little bit more of a stable setup. That might be why we're seeing them make the kind of moves they are here in Group 2. However, that's when they have a full fuel tank, have that downforce, that weight in the back end of the car. As this run continues on, the back end of the car gets lighter, and actually saw a number of drivers have some issues getting off the banking of turn 4 onto the flat apron and access road to pit lane. So that's something these drivers are going to have to deal with in just a few laps when they have to make what looks like could be our first round of green flag pit stops.
Curious. I actually think that some of these groups back in this second pack that are actually a little bit organized. Obviously, the lead pack, there's only 6 cars in, so theoretically there can be only 2 pit groups that are going to work out of that one. And if 4 cars go in the first pit group, well, you got to pit the next lap so that you don't lose too much time. So, ultimately, what can happen out of this second group is we can end up with like 3, 4, 5 groups of cars that can potentially all pit at the same, at different laps, right? We've got different options going on back there. Ultimately, right now, there's a lot of bustling, there's a lot of pushing for position. If I'm in this second group, what I'm going to say to myself right now is, we just hit lap 25. All right, I can pit. I'm now in the window to pit. In fact, I was probably in the window a couple laps ago, but this is the safety window. Now I'm definitely in this window. I'm going to pit this time by. I'm going to try and get 3 or 4 rubber buddies to come with me. We're going to come out of the pit stop. We're going to go gangbusters. We're going to clear this entire pack, and we've made all of those moves without actually having to make a single overtake out on track. That's what I think that some of these guys need to do right now. Ultimately, what's happening is that they're really, really compromised. Too many cars running multi-wide, too much multi-groove racing. Keep your eyes on the prize, boys. Don't necessarily go for that spot right now. Save it up, get to pit road, take a quick stop, get out there and make it out on the track.
Obviously, this in many ways can be likened to a stock car super speedway race, and one of the tough things with a super speedway race, whether it be with cup cars or Xfinity cars or the trucks even, is the orchestrating of green flag pit stops. You've got to make sure that the drivers around you that are deciding to stay out maybe an extra lap, that they know you're coming to pit road. At the same time, you got to be aware of where the braking zone or the lift point might be of the driver in front of you that's coming to pit lane the same lap that you are. So we'll see if they're going to be able to do it. We're only about maybe 2 or 3 laps away from when we're going to see our first drivers dive onto pit lane. And you mentioned about Charles Teed. I I would hazard a guess that Henry Bennett could very well be one of those first drivers on pit road as well, because after Wagner and Kobe Moore kind of settled out their differences of who was going to lead this race, then Bennett jumped up to the front, and he's been able to hold them in his rearview mirror for a good portion of this run. Maybe not by choice. Maybe these guys are allowing him to cut the draft for them.
Yeah, I think they definitely are. I think that everyone's just sort of using their heads a little bit. If you actually have a look at our lead pack, they're all single filed out, and they've been so since about lap 10. They sort of went, okay, we sort of know who's got the fuel, who hasn't, who's got the speed, who hasn't. It's a little bit of that shuffling around. Tires start to fade a little bit. Pace is going to fall off just fractionally. The way that the car's handling is going to change up with that fuel balance. I want to go back to something you actually said about a couple minutes ago about that fuel balance. It's actually not downforce that's changing within the car. It's the car balance as the weight shifts out of the rear. What that does is it doesn't necessarily... Yeah, the car's a little bit lighter, but you balance where the weight is on the car. Think of the car like kind of like a pole or a seesaw. Think about it that way. If you put weight on one end, the car's going to lean at that end. What we do with these cars is we put a big old fuel tank in the back. Yeah, there's weights around the rest of the car, and they're sort of scattered all the way through there. But what happens is throughout the course of the race, we slowly pull fuel out of one side of that seesaw. What that does is the seesaw starts to teeter a little bit more. It starts to flip up and down. And that's what causes the balance changes within the car. And that's what it is. It's a balance change. Charles Teed's actually going to come to pit road this time by.
Teed in the 50, going to be pinned from the 7th position. Doesn't look like anybody in that lead group is coming down pit road this time, so Teed's going to be coming down all by his lonesome. We'll see if that's going to be a help or a hindrance. Obviously, he'll have a very clean pit road, but he won't have anybody to draft with when he comes back out onto the racetrack unless he's able to merge maybe with a group after they make their pit stop.
Heard a whole bunch of guys that are coming to pit road this time by, so with that drafting effect and the massive pack that we've had, they've been able to run a lot further than they maybe would have been able to on their own. So as a group of cars actually come from the lead, there's only a couple cars that have come to pit road, so a lot of guys have been able to save a lot more fuel than we might have expected. And I tell you what, if they can get to lap 33, all of a sudden, it's only a 2-stop race instead of a 3-stop race. This thing might change.
As Rick Ravon and Henry Bennett from the lead pack coming down. Polo Hernandez, Nicholas Winook, and Joe Agee. They have also come to pit lane from that second pack. See here of these remaining 4 up in the lead group who's coming to pit road. Looks like Kobe Moore is indicating he's coming to pit road. Matt Wagner behind him in the 11. They're going to hit pit lane, turning the race lead over to the defending champion, Robert Maleska III.
Yeah, so Maleska's been able to... Remember what I said? Keep your eyes on Maleska, see what he's doing, just keep an eye on that guy. He knows exactly what he's doing. It was all intentional, him sitting back there in the draft. He was just sitting there, he's watching, he's reading, he's saving. That's what he does, and he does so successfully. He knows his fuel numbers he's got to hit. He's gone out there and he's hit them. Just having a quick look, no tire set, so what you're going to see is every single time these drivers come to pit road, they're going to take a set of tires because there's no limit to them. You don't want to be left out there on old rubber at any stage in the race. So expect that to be exactly what happens on pit road as well.
Wow, look at this group coming down. About 6 drivers in this pack. We see Bronson Stafford, Jim Herrick, Jim Brooks, Eric Schausa. A little contact there to the backup. I think that was Herrick's 57. Charles Johnson, Gail Brooks, and Eric Peterson. They're all in this lap, which means these 2 guys in your shot, the 2 former champions, Maleska III and Nick DeGroot, they're going to be the last 2 to complete this cycle of green flag pit stops, and they're coming in this time.
Yeah, interesting to note is that if they're going to make it the entire race distance, they need to make sure that they get draft buddies for the vast majority of that. What happens is, as the race progresses, as the pit stops progress, and as the race the distance between those stops sort of progresses, is all of a sudden, they're going to stretch a little bit further, a little bit further behind those lead packs. They may have to push their fuel quite aggressively in the first couple laps to hope that they can save aggressively. Right now, both Maleska and DeGroot are both right on the window of being able to make this a 2-stop race. It is going to be tight for these guys, and they are going to have to manage their races to perfection. But if anyone can do it, it's the 2 guys that have won the series before.
Of course, DeGroot obviously coming in with the playbook, a previous winner from last season. As it looks like the 91 and the 89, they kind of got separated there, coming to pit road and leaving pit road. So Henry Bennett and Rick Ravon looks like they might be able to eat the both of them up. Well, maybe not. Maleska was able to get up to speed a lot quicker than I expected. He might actually keep them in his rearview mirror. They're getting a big run on him down the front straightaway here, and actually it's going to be Rick Ravon on the top side that's going to swing around the 91 and go to the point. Now, we saw that last season, Nick DeGroot, heading into that season as the defending champion, he chose to take on the championship number 1 on his machine. He's now back to the 89. Robert Mleska III had the option, chose to stick with the lucky number 91 on his machine. So there is no number 1 car in the field here in Season 4.
Yeah, interesting to note. Obviously, that 91 has brought him a lot of luck over the last few seasons. And some guys, you know, sports people, they're very, very superstitious, Seth. I mean, I play cricket out here in Australia. Look, I'm not going to explain it to you guys. It's just not going to happen. But I'm a sports guy. I know one bat tap behind my right foot, one bat tap in front of my left foot, and then I'm good to go. If I don't do that every single ball, I know that I'm going to be a little bit out of whack. Some of these guys are going to be the same. 91 clearly worked for him last season. All of a sudden, he's back here, out here again, gets the option. Not going to take it. Superstitious guy. I like it.
So we had 6 in the lead group to start with. 6 in the lead group here after this first cycle green flag pit stops. And well done to all 22 drivers in the field. Everybody got it down to pit road speed. Nobody got pegged with a speeding penalty. So all 22 that took the green flag to start this race, 1 green flag pit stop later, they're all still running, all still on the lead lap.
Yeah, but there's going to be a whole bunch of guys that are really caught out. Now, Eric Peterson and Jeffrey Duncan didn't get the pit stops that they were looking for, so all of a sudden, they're left without a draft buddy. I'm looking at the 81 of Joe Adji as well. He's unfortunately dropped off the back of the pack. Other than that, everyone else has found themselves in different little drafting packs. Robert Mleska is right up in this lead group once again. It looks like it pretty much has not changed in terms of who's actually up here. What's happened now, though, is that they've formed a 4-second gap to the next group that's running behind them. In fact, that gap's actually started to open up to 4.5 seconds back to the next group behind them. So it looks like in these early phases of the race, we don't get a caution. It's going to be one of these lead 6 drivers that's going to be winning the race tonight.
Yeah, right now you've got 2 packs of 6 up inside of your top 12. Your top 6 from Ravon to Wagner. Then you got Polo Hernandez leading this group of 6 all the way back to Nicholas Winook. Then you got a group of 2 trying to maybe latch on to that group up ahead or maybe fall back to the group behind. Jim Herrick and Mike Tellier right there. Then you got another group back here. That's a group of 5 being led by Charles Johnson, Jeff Heisong, Eric Schaus, Benjamin Combs, and Gail Brooks in this mix. And you mentioned about those 3 that were straggling towards the back. None of them in vicinity of that last group, and none of those 3 really in the vicinity of each other either. They're all running out there single cars, no draft for any of those 3, and obviously, you know, it takes them about 33, 34 seconds to get around this racetrack. Right now, Eric Peterson is running 17 seconds behind the race leader, which means he's only running about 16 seconds ahead of them. This thing continues to go long green flag run, he could find himself under green flag conditions going a lap down.
That's disappointing, but unfortunately, sometimes that does just happen. He's clearly had a mistake or something coming to pit road, and it's just not going well for him. I'm actually keeping my eyes on both Jeffrey Duncan and Joe Adji as well. I think that Duncan's actually starting to make some time back towards Adji, so maybe those 2 can group up. Hopefully, they can try and get their races back into a position where they've still got a chance of at least collecting some points. But if they don't do that, their nights are over. Taking a look at this second pack now as well. If you actually have a look, Seth, it's split out into 2 micro packs. There's sort of one pack at about the 5 to 6 seconds back off of the leaders, and then you throw it another 1.5, 2 seconds back, and there's another micro pack sort of forming in there. So that middle pack with the bulk of the cars in it is now starting to split apart.
Yeah, Mike Tellier and Jim Herrick are at the tail end of this. They were able to latch on to the draft of this second group, did not fall back to that third group, which right now is being led by Charles Johnson. We'll see if maybe that third pack will be able to catch up here and reel in this lead group. Right now, the difference between Tellier and Johnson is about 7.5 tenths of a second. It is slowly increasing, and then it seems to decrease when they enter into the corner. I think we may end up having a big pack here of about maybe 12, 13 cars from 7th on back to around the 18th, 19th position here in just a few moments. Yeah, they've latched on, so going to have a big group here, but those 6 out in front, they're just continuing to run single file, open up as big a gap as they possibly can. 5 seconds from Wagner back to the leader of that second group, Jim Herrick.
Yeah, and again, Charles Teed is now back deep within that pack. He's not running anywhere near the front of that. Mike Tellier is doing a really good job. Big shout out to Mike Tellier running the Flat Out Racing Network car. Thank you for carrying the sponsor delivery. Actually, I tell you what, it's a good opportunity once again to talk about our sponsors here for Dark Horse, Seth.
Definitely, we've got Troy Lee Designs that's sponsoring the series here this season, the Dark Horse IndyCar series. Also, LMC, they're a sponsor here this season as well, and there's been a lot of new sponsors coming on between seasons 3 and season 4. We'll be documenting them all during the course of the season. A lot of them sponsoring the races here in the schedule as well. 11 laps. Oh, sorry.
I'm so jealous of the Troy Lee Designs. I've kept an eye on them as a clothing manufacturer because I'm a big motocross fan. Over the last several years, big fan of Troy Lee Designs and what they do. So I'm kind of jealous that to be able to broadcast a race that's sponsored by them. That's really cool.
I'm looking at the laps that these drivers came in. Obviously, DeGroot and Maleska, they were able to stay out the longest. It looks like Maleska has fallen back into what we saw him do in the first run. He's the 5th car in this line, so obviously he's saving some more fuel. But Nick DeGroot, who also seemed to be saving fuel on that first run, he is actually leading the pack now. So he would be using up a lot more fuel than Robert Maleska III. When you talked about those two kind of being borderline of making it a 2-stop race, looks like Maleska III might be the only one of these two that is thinking that type of strategy.
But you got to remember that that is so reliant on finding somebody to maintain the draft with. If he loses that, the thing about that strategy is it's actually when you think of things, right? The 2-stop strategy, it should be the no risk, right? One less pit stop, you definitely are going to make it home. It should be okay. Of the 2 strategies, it is the highest risk strategy because if you make a mistake in your fuel at any point during the race, if you have to burn excessive fuel to catch back up to another group, back to 3 stops. That's it. So, I mean, it's high risk, high reward. Because if he doesn't have to make that extra stop, race is done, it's all his. But that last run, when everybody else cycles through to the box, that's where he's going to be in trouble.
That's not much, but I've been keeping an eye on the interval of that second group to the lead group of 6. And it, little by little, has been starting to dwindle away. It's been minute thousandths per lap, but it has now been cut to under 5 seconds between Wagner back to Jim Herrick. So this second group is making up some ground. I'm not necessarily certain that they would be able to get up here to the lead group by time we get to the second round of pit stops, should we remain under the green flag, but they're obviously doing something right because they've been able to cut down what was almost a 5.5 second interval from Group 1 back to Group 2.
Yeah, and if you actually have a look at the way that this second group's starting to run, during that first sort of run to the first fuel stop, they were actually running multiple times throughout the pack, 2, 3. There was a couple guys that tried to show a nose forward and then decided better of it. Well done to those guys that decided better of it. That's not very smart. But they've done a phenomenal job at recognizing in their second sort of run that they need to single file out. If they're going to have a shot at winning this race, they have to. There's really no option. They'll make a pass, they'll make a slingshot, and then they get back to single file again. Then they slingshot, then they slingshot, then they slingshot, dragging themselves further and further up. If you actually have a look at both of these packs right now, both the lead pack and this second pack, what they're doing is they're having one car doing the bulk of the pushing. That's really bad for the one pack. This is a pack of guys that's just basically saying, you're our target guy. You're the scapegoat. You're going to get thrown up and thrown in the trash can at the end of the race, and we're going to really use you up. So, unfortunately, Jim Herrick has got to find a way that he can offload the fuel pushing onto somebody else. But if he doesn't do that, they're never going to catch the rest of the pack. Because if you actually have a look, they're starting to pull away. Both Jim Herrick and Nicholas Winnock, they're starting to pull away at the front of this pack. So either somebody from this pack needs to put the hammer down and decide that fuel isn't as important, or this pack suddenly splits into 2 packs again.
Saw that car just up ahead of the race leaders. That's Eric Peterson. Now, they are not coming around to put him a first lap down. He actually just hit pit lane about 5 laps ago, so he is already -1 to leaders and in danger of going a second lap down. I was going to ask you a question here. I'm actually going to just use a test case here because just moments ago, I saw them check up going into turn 1. Covey Moore had to slow up for Nick DeGroot, and I think Rick Ravon actually had to hit the brakes, pump the brakes for just a brief moment. Obviously, these guys, they're going to make the most speed when they're running single file. Again, kind of an aspect of super speedway racing, but talked about the way that these cars get such tremendous runs when they're running in the draft of the car in front of them. How difficult is it to discipline yourself to run nose to tail with the car in front of you when you get such a big run to the back of them?
It's all about throttle management. I wouldn't be necessarily looking to pump the brakes. Yeah, I mean, if you're all of a sudden, so what pumping the brakes does is it's a big way of basically you lose a lot of efficiency as soon as you pump the brakes. You're resting your speed. You got to burn the fuel to get back up there. So if any of these guys are thinking about doing that, what they want to do is just cut out a little bit into the air, roll out of the gas, and they should be fine. Something else to remember, and this is something that you got to be very cognizant of in any oval series because they just don't have brake lights, these cars. And same with all the stock cars as well. No brake lights. What that means is you've got to pick it up as soon as there's a momentum change. You have to be very aware of it. A lot of the drivers actually could use what's your reaction times out of your peripheral vision, so not straight down the center, right out of that corner of your eye, is actually a lot stronger. We as humans have evolved so that we can sense things in the corner of our eyes and react quicker to them because it's coming out of a blind spot. They use it in speedway bike racing. They actually turn their heads to the side so that their peripheral vision is looking at the tape that decides the race start. Some of these guys may be using that in their IndyCars as well. It really sort of helps them react quicker. It's an option though. It's a risky option sometimes because it means you're not looking at precisely where you're going. But yeah, I mean, you're going to have to... couple different things in terms of managing the fuel. Manage it with your throttle foot. Probably not going to try and pump the brakes at all because you're going to risk a locked tire. That's going to lead to a lot of tire wear. It's going to throw you, an overheated tire. It's going to throw you way back down in terms of traffic, and you're burning excess fuel off to try and catch that back up rather than just rolling out of the throttle and just managing it. There could be opportunities where a lot of these guys are running at 75% throttle just to make sure that they're not catching that leader as quickly as they necessarily would at 100.
I want to get your take on this because I was noticing Charles Johnson in the 9 just rapidly moving his way through the field. Now, the reason that this was happening, everybody seemed to run that middle line through the corners all single file. He was going right down there to the inside, almost to that white line, no draft, no nothing, and he was passing these guys on the shorter way around the racetrack. He had actually had some internet connection problems just about maybe 15 laps ago, had dropped down to 18th, and after he was still at the tail end of this lead group, he picked up 10 spots in the last 10 laps. He's leading the second pack, so obviously that's got to be something these guys have to be looking at here towards the end of the race, that you can probably be able to make a pass on multiple race cars. If you can hook the bottom, you don't necessarily have to have someone behind you to keep that momentum going.
Things as a part of that. Let's talk about the internet connection issue just very briefly. He's actually done a very smart thing here. Part and parcel, and we understand this as iRacers and as broadcasters that commentate on iRacing a lot, but for those of you who are coming to us from potentially a real-life capacity, you look at things like this and you say, internet connection, how can that affect a race? Well, in iRacing, we don't really have that ability to have a radiator, have sort of hardware failures, which is something that iRacing brings to us. It brings to us in the form of internet connection, and it brings it to the form of us of our computer hardware. Your graphics card's failing, your hard drive has a failure, your temperatures in your PC overheat. So whilst we can't necessarily have these sort of failures within the cars, that's really not a great system. It does come to us in other formats. What he's done is he's cycled back, he's taken the safe option, he's figured out whatever the issue was with his connection, he's saved some fuel at the same time, and then he's decided, okay, everything's fixed, everything's back together, we're going to start making passes. Now, the reason he is able to make those passes, it gets down the inside, there's actually nobody else running down on that inside. The instant that somebody comes down and takes that arrow away from him, he's going to struggle to make those overtakes. It means that he'll be able to run down there on the straights and actually make passes in terms of a straight line, but through the corners he won't have such a momentum lead. What I think he's actually done is he's looked at the 57 machine here of Jim Herrick, and he's seen him starting to run away at the front of this field, and he's gone, I need to do something about this. He's been at the back of the pack for a long enough period of time that he's saved enough fuel, and then he's gone, alright, there's a guy going for that lead of this pack, I've got to go with him.
Speaking of fuel, these drivers are right on the cusp of having to make their second green flag pit stop. Jeffrey Duncan was on pit lane 3 laps ago. Some of the guys we're looking at that will be hitting pit lane somewhere in the next lap or two. Charles Teed, he last pitted back on lap, I believe it was 31. Also got Henry Bennett and Rick Ravon in this lead group. They'll be on pit road in the next 2 laps or so. Looks like they're going to be staying out an extra lap here. We're going to follow the 50 of Charles Teed right now, running 3rd car of that second pack, currently in the 9th position. We'll see if he's going to have to duck onto pit road this time or not. No, he's pretty high there off of 4, so he's not pitting just yet. So it looks like these guys are getting just a little bit better fuel mileage on this second run than they were on the first. And maybe part and parcel could be because they're all, for the most part, kind of running single file rather than the double wide 3 wide we saw back during the first run.
Yeah, and you'll see that start to change towards the latter ends of the next sort of fuel run as well. The guy that I'm actually really concerned, we saw Charles Teed, yeah, sure, lead a bunch of laps at the front of the second pack, but he's had other guys move to the fore and take over for him. Jim Herrick hasn't had that benefit. He's had to have a crack at trying to catch this lead group, and in fact, he's coming to pit road now. Why? He has to. He doesn't have the choice. He's had to try and get out there, burn as much fuel as he can, hope that he can stick it on the back of the lead pack, and pray that everything goes his way. Hasn't gone his way. He got no assistance from the pack. He's left in the middle of nowhere. Sometimes that's just the way that it goes.
Well, certainly hoping this isn't going to be a trend, as it looks like Henry Bennett's coming to pit road, but we've had our first driver busted by the speeding police. Joe Agee in the 81. He was too fast entering pit road just a couple of laps ago. He had to serve the 30-second penalty. That now has him trapped 2 laps down to the race leader.
Charles Johnson.
Charles Johnson, Charles Teed, Paul Hernandez, Nicholas Winook, Benjamin Combs, Jeff Heisong. They're all on pit lane, so the second round of pit stops has officially begun. For most of these guys, they're still going to be somewhere in the range of 8 to 10 laps short of making it to the finish.
Yeah, so just having a quick look at the way that Charles Johnson came to pit road, he just missed it just slightly. He's in the grass. Grass doesn't have enough grip, means that you can't push that brake pedal down as hard as you necessarily want to. He's actually escaped without a speeding penalty. That is lucky. That is very lucky for Charles Johnson.
And he looks like he managed to maintain his track position. The drivers that he was ahead of coming down pit lane, he is ahead of leaving pit road. So yeah, really good recovery by him. As Kobe Moore now takes the lead. Maleska the third, Matt Wagner are the 3 remaining drivers from the original lead pack, and 2 of them now going to break for pit road, leaving Maleska all by himself. And again, you know, as we said, he's been the guy since the drop of the green flag that's kind of put himself towards the tail end of the lead group. He's been saving the fuel. Oh, but I don't know. I mean, he'd have to go, what, maybe another 2 laps here in order to guarantee to possibly make it the rest of the way. And even then, he would need the draft help from here to the checkered flag.
It's tough. It is definitely... He's giving himself options, though. So the issue is, if you don't go long on those first 2 pit stops, you've got no chance of making it home on the 3rd one. As soon as you go, if you commit to your fuel strategy early, you commit to that 3-stop strategy early, there's no way that you can get back onto that 2-stop strategy. Whereas if he commits to it now, has the potential to make it work, and then it still doesn't work, he's still got the option of that 3rd strategy. That's why he's doing this. He's actually got a lot of fuel on board. He's run a lot of laps at the back of that pack. I don't think he's led, he led the first lap of the day and that's it? He led the start, that's it? I don't think we've seen him at the front of that pack at all.
No, you're absolutely right. I think he only spent maybe 1 or 2 laps out in front, and for the most part, has just been holding down 5th or 6th place, tail end of the lead pack. Looks like that we got 2 drivers that might be looking for the 2-stop strategy here. Maleska the third's the leader. Jim Brooks in the 51 has also stayed out. So those 2 right now, they are actually, Brooks is just hitting pit lane. So he stayed out 34 laps. Maleska's looking to stay out 35 laps, and we're at 32 laps to go. Obviously, again, Maleska.
Oh, no, there he goes.
Yeah, he's coming down. So he's going to have to come out with someone to be able to make sure he's going to have the fuel to make it to the finish. But right now, Maleska and Brooks, they might be the only 2 that can make it to the checker, depending on how much fuel saving takes place with the other drivers.
Robert Maleska will be very, very conscious that he needs to save a lot of fuel to still be able to make it home. Remember, as well, these other drivers are going to have to pit at some point to get that fuel top up. Now, in my head, I want them to pit early. Why? They want to take away the draft support for Robert. Now, in Robert's head, he has to do all of his saving now. If he comes out, he saves aggressively the instant that he comes off pit road here. Those last 10 laps, he might be able to push the whole way. He might have enough fuel left in the tank that it won't even be a question mark. He'll be home and hosed. Won't even be close, right? So he wants to get in the back of this end of this draft pack. He wants to literally turn that engine all the way down and make sure that he maintains that draft, and then he's good. After that, he is good, right? Because he's only going to make 30 laps. We know that a fuel tank is 29 laps with a little bit of draft support. One car with a whole pack, it's obviously an extra 5 laps, especially if you're turning the engine all the way down. I think he might actually be good. I think Jim is in trouble. Jim Brooks is in trouble. I'm not 100% sure what he's going to look like at the back end of this thing, but I think that Robert's got it.
Now, he has left pit road ahead of Matt Wagner, Kobe Moore and company. Those drivers are going to be right on the cusp of whether they could make it on fuel or not, because they came to pit lane with 34 laps left in this race. And I'm noticing here that they're not all that anxious to draft up to the back of the 91. They're keeping him out there in clean air with no draft whatsoever. So this could be a combination of two things. Number one, they're backing their pace off to make sure they're going to have enough fuel to get to the checkers. But number two, they're trying to make sure that fuel strategy from Leska III does not work out.
Okay, so in Robert's shoes now, he has two options. Either he tries to just let these guys come by, and that means he's going to roll right out of it, right? He's just got to make sure that this happens. Alternatively, he goes, okay, these guys aren't going to want to draft me at all, right? These guys are not going to let me come back in, slot in behind them, and win the race that way. Okay, let's go in the other direction. I've got more fuel than they do. I can run harder than they do. Let's draft. Let's run away and run out of the draft zone of these guys. Then they're screwed on fuel. Then they're screwed on pace. You know, so there's two different options that he can go with here. Because he's saved as much fuel as he has already, he has that flexibility. He's got the ability to just push as he needs. I guarantee you, he would have filled that tank up.
Now, one thing I'm noticing here, they have backed their pace down. A lot of drivers are hitting somewhere between 218 to 220 in the center of the corner. These guys are barely hitting 216, 217, so they are backing their pace down. Plus, if you think about it too, right now, you're visibly seeing it translates to about maybe 7-8 tenths of a second from Oleska back to Matt Wagner. Once these guys, this group of 4, feel that they are good to make it on fuel and they punch the accelerator, Maleska III is going to be a sitting duck.
Yeah, here's the thing about this race. Right now, we're poised on that knife edge, right? The race is still very easily... you know what? Knife edge is probably the wrong call, because I think there's potentially one of 3 scenarios that can happen here. I think the race is probably going to go into a holding pattern for probably the next 20... probably not even 20 laps. I'm thinking probably 15 laps. We're going to be just going into this holding pattern, and then guys are going to start deciding where they're going to go on fuel. Alternatively, what we could see is Robert just backs his pace all the way down, make sure that he's in the draft, make sure that he gets home. The third option is that he just goes for it, right? So we've got that branch right now. So ultimately, everyone's in a holding pattern. Nobody wants to be doing anything. And I'm actually watching that gap sort of on in both directions. I think he's actually just decided that he's going to go for it. The gap's not closing at all.
Well, we had 6 drivers in the lead pack pretty much the entirety of this race. One has kind of broken away from the other 5. Henry Bennett still running in the 6th position, but he is almost 6 seconds behind the lead group. Now, I was looking at the telemetry. He did everything fine as far as his pit crew's pit stop. The slowest pit stop of the top 6 was a 9-second flat for Rick Ravon. Henry Bennett's team, they gave him an 8.3, but there was 36 seconds spent on pit road with pit entry and pit exit. Somewhere in that area, he lost anywhere from 2 to 3 seconds to the other top 5, and that's what has him back in this position, now falling back into the clutches of Jim Herrick and Charles Johnson. So that's the trouble with green flag pit stops. It's all about execution from commitment line to commitment line, because just even a mere second of a mistake can cost you not only positions, but a lot of time on the track.
I mean, how many of those mistakes did we see at the Indianapolis, the real life Indianapolis 500? How many guys did we see making mistakes all the way down pit road? You know, making mistakes coming into the stop, making mistakes on the brakes, the way that they handle those. Admittedly, a lot of those actually. Sorry, I'll get back to that in a moment. Right now, I'm just having a look at the gap. Purely because of this lap car being in the way, which is Eric Peterson, the gap has opened up. It is now 1.5 seconds. This is Robert going for it. I think he is just going, you know what? Turn that fuel mode back up. We are going to win this thing on pure pace alone.
It's going to put Eric Peterson 2 laps down in 36. Right now, 22 drivers that took the green still out there. 20 of them on the lead lap. Joe Agee, 1 lap down. Peterson, 2 laps down, as Maleska III closing in on 20 laps to go. Again, looking for his first win at Michigan and looking to pretty much make the statement of, hey, last year I was dominant. I won the championship. I'm coming back with that same dominance here, and I'm going to establish my bid for back-to-back championships at the very get-go. It's interesting, too, because if you just joined us, folks, we've run these full 80 laps completely under the green flag. We have not seen a caution in the entirety of this race. If you go back to Season 2, the Michigan race had 8 cautions. Last year's Michigan race had 5 cautions, but that flagman's had nothing to do up there in the flag stand since the start of this race. He's just been watching these drivers do circuits because we have remained clean and green, had 2 cycles of green flag pit stops, and now we're going to find out who's got the fuel in the tank to potentially make it back to the checkered flag.
Matt Wagner just come on the radio. He's pitting. He's going to make sure that he gets in now, and he goes for it because he's not making any benefits at the lead of that draft pack. You know what? They're 2 seconds back. They're falling away. This race belongs right now to Robert Maleska. Everyone else has got to make the response. So we've gone through that phase, right? We were talking about it. There's about that 10-lap window right now whereby the drivers are going to pick what they want to do. And all of them have decided that they need to save. Every single one of them has decided that they need to save. Matt Wagner has just gone, you know what? I've gone too far. I've got to say, I've saved as much as I possibly can. I'm going to try and turn that wicker up. I need to come down pit road. I need to grab as much fuel as I possibly can. I need to get back out there, and I have got to send that engine mode to max. I'm going to go chase this guy down, because if I do not do that, this race is going to devolve very quickly, and Robert's got the race. He's made that call.
Looks like Wagner called an audible there, though, because he was running low there through 3 and 4 as if he was going to come to pit road, as you indicated, but then decided to stay out, actually just dropped back here, 3rd car in this pack, so maybe changing his strategy up here, maybe realizing that if he came to pit road, nobody else was going to come down with him, so maybe he's going to just attempt and see if he can save a little bit more fuel here as the 3rd car in line, but that's interesting.
I think he has to. I don't think he has a choice.
The interesting thing is, you mentioning the fact that he was the one that made the call, he was going to be coming to pit road. I mean, some of these guys around him, they pitted 1 to 3 laps sooner than he did. He was one of the last guys up in this lead pack to come to pit road, notwithstanding Robert Maleska III, who's been able to stretch it the furthest of anybody. But you would think that these guys up here, like Kobe Moore, Nick DeGroot, and Rick Ravon, they'd be more inclined to duck onto pit road than Wagner would.
You'd be thinking that, right? So what I think's happened is that these guys have just been backing the pace down, backing the pace down, backing the pace down, and then all of them are going, oh, we actually can't make it? What do we do? Ultimately, alright, so Wagner's got 2 options here. Right now, if he pushes to the front of this group, he's going to drive all of these guys deeper into the fuel window and potentially make them even better in terms of fuel. What he's trying to do right now by sitting at the back end of this pack is he just wants to watch these guys. He doesn't really have a choice. He's got to save fuel. He doesn't have a choice, right? He's just come on the radio to the other drivers and said, that second group, that 57 car group, that's right behind them now. Jim Herrick is in the draft. He's got Charles Johnson. He's got Henry Bennett. This has worked in Bennett's favor. Bennett saved a ton of fuel in those early stages. Look at these guys. Look at the pace. It's not even close. They've got the wicket turned all the way up.
Herrick, and that's the 9 of Johnson going around the outside. Bennett, on the other hand, decides to actually hang with that group of 4. He's going to tuck in behind Rick Ravon, and he's going to just slot into the 8th position. Kind of mission accomplished, got up here to this lead group. But yeah, Jim Herrick, Charles Johnson, they're making the charge here. We'll see if they continue to punch it or if they're going to try and mesh with this group here and make it a group of 7. Yeah, it doesn't look like it. Looks like these guys, they're going to race for second position between Johnson and Herrick. The thing about Maleska the third as well, we think that he's good to make it on fuel the way that he's running, but could this be a case of him trying to just put as much distance as possible between himself and the others in case they can't make it on fuel, knowing that he cannot make it to the checkered flag right now before coming to pit road one more time?
Potentially. Look at the gap that's now opened up as well. It's now nearly an entire straightaway. It's about 3/4 of a straightaway right now. Is how big this gap is. He's turned the wicker up as well. He's just gone again. I need to go. I'm keeping my eyes on Matt Wagner. Matt Wagner is the guy that is sitting at the back of this pack with the least amount of pace in him. He is desperately trying to hang on to this pack. I can tell you that for a fact. But he needs to turn the wicker up. He's stuck, right? He doesn't have the fuel, but he needs the draft. Really, really bad position. I think the guy that is best positioned in this pack is actually Henry Bennett. Because remember, he dropped off the tail end of these guys. He didn't turn the wicker up to try and get back up to them. He just went, okay, there's another group. I'm going to settle in with those guys. Those guys are going to pull me back up to the leaders. I'm going to save the fuel. I'm going to still get back up there. I'm going to be good. I think out of this group, we've got Jim Herrick and we've got Charles Johnson. I think they're both dead on fuel. The speed that they've been running to get back up here, they're dead on fuel. But they know it, and they're committing to it. Everybody else is caught in this limbo land, man.
Last time by, you could kind of get an indication just on lap times who is saving. Henry Bennett, Matt Wagner, Rick Ravon, they're obviously saving. But there's some guys, even outside the top 10, that are maybe thinking these guys are not going to be able to make it on fuel. Bronson Stafford, Benjamin Combs, Eric Schaus, Jim Brooks, their pace, it is back down quite a bit here on this run. I think they're of the feeling that if these guys up here inside of the top 10 cannot make it, it may be between those guys from about 14th back to 17th that might settle it out for this win.
Matt Wagner's just turned up the wick as well. He's starting to go for it. Now, I think this is the right decision. Because at this point in time, he knows that he's not good on fuel. He knows that he's not going to get there. So, same thing that Robert's doing. Open that gap up. You want to break away. You want to split this pack into two. What is the best possible thing that you can do right now is split this pack up. You don't want it going. I tell you what, the lead guys at this front of this pack, Charles Johnson, Jim Herrick, they're going for it, man. They are trying to break away from this pack as well.
If we're breaking down the numbers here, Robert Maleska III, if he's able to make it to the checkered flag with what he's got in the tank, he would have gone 31 laps on this stint. We were told the magic number in draft on a run is 29. Outside from catching to the back of Eric Peterson for just a brief moment, Maleska has had absolutely no draft on this run.
We're saying, right, Maleska has gone from safe to very unsafe. But look at the margin he's got. He can turn the pace down. He's got 8 seconds. So he can turn the pace down, right? We're 8 laps from the end. We are 8 laps from the end. He can lose a second lap from here, turning the wicker all the way back down again. And he's still safe. He still wins this race, right? So that's something else to consider. We're going to see these pit stops. We're under 10 laps to go. There's 8 laps to go in this thing, man. We're like, pit strategy is about to play itself out.
You gotta wonder for these guys when it is go time. Obviously, we know Maleska's on go. Johnson and Herrick are on go. Bennett and Wagner appear to have gotten going here. Not certain if Covey Moore, Nick DeGroot, and Rick Ravon, if they've decided to punch the throttle just yet. Their pace is back down a little bit more here the last couple of laps. That last time by, they actually ran in the 35-second lap time. That's about a 33.5 that most of the rest of the field is running.
Yeah, so they've obviously got issues. They were punching out laps at the front of this group for a long, long period of time. Here they come. The 18's come to pit road. Who's that? That's Jeff Highsong. Dylan Moskowitz just jumped on the radio. He said he has to pit as well. He's out. So
Benjamin Combs, I think, just came to pit road in the 77. He was a guy that was saving fuel heavily towards the rear of the field. So here we go. 6 laps remaining. Who's got the fuel to make it to the checkered? No cautions here tonight at Michigan. It's going to be one of those classic fuel strategy races that Michigan always seems to bring to the table. And here come a whole bunch to pit lane.
Yeah, that's a huge deal. You know, the 007's still going here, Seth. The 91's pace has definitely started to back off. He is slowing it. He is slowing it down in a big way. That 007, I think Henry Bennett might actually be good in terms of fuel. Mike Tellier has all of a sudden jumped up to third because this third pack is now the guys that are potentially good on fuel. The guys that may have done it. Oh, there's a car spinning out of pit lane onto the track.
And that's going to be Charles Johnson in the 9. Can he get that thing back towards pit lane with oncoming traffic? He's below the white line, so no caution is thrown. Looks like we are going to remain under the green flag. That is a close call there at pit lane exit. Johnson had just finished up a pit stop. We still remain under the green. Less than 5 to go. Make it 4 as Maleska comes off of turn number 4. Drivers that were on pit lane there, including Charles Johnson, included the 4 of Dylan Moskowitz, the 57 of Jim Herrick, and the 11 of Matt Wagner. Right now, 13 drivers trying to make it with what they have in the tank. Actually, correction, 12, as Bennett has hit pit lane.
It's out. Bennett is going to shuffle back in a long way down. Mike Telly has come to pit lane. Whole host of guys come back to pit lane. Jim Herrick is clear. There is no one around Jim Herrick. He's got that second spot locked down. Robert Moleskowitz. Robert Maleska. Getting Molowitz and Maleska mixed up. That's a no-no. He's clean because now he's got this margin that's 17 seconds. He's got the race. He literally just turns the engine off at this point and he's still got it.
Yeah, he and Jim Brooks were the 2 drivers that stayed out the longest back on the second round of green flag pit stops. Brooks, the driver running second place right now. So theoretically, he's the only driver that would be able to make it as far as Robert Maleska III is able to make it. And as you mentioned, over 17 seconds between the two. 2 laps to go for Robert Maleska III. And maybe the guy that I was thinking didn't have a ghost of a shot of making it on fuel might be the very guy to do it. But again, we go back and look at last season. 10 trips to victory lane. Wins the championship in dominating fashion. I mean, he went into the season finale triple digits ahead of then second in the points, Alex Van de Sant. And I mean, dominant isn't even the word. I mean, there has to be another word that means more than dominant, because that is exactly what Maleska III did. And he's proving why. It doesn't matter what type of track, what type of configuration, what type of fuel situation it is. He rises to the occasion, and he's just got 2 more miles to claim his 11th career Dark Horse IndyCar Series victory and first of Season 4.
Yeah, and he's got it hands down. He can shut the engine off at this point, and he's won. I'm actually just keeping my eyes on this second pack. Jim Brooks might be a little bit fuel compromised. Bronson Stafford is all of a sudden just making moves to push his car to the front of this battle pack as well. Mike Telly is there, but he's a lap down. There's all of a sudden, you've got multiple cars that are real close together and real tight on fuel as Maleska's going to cross the line.
Checkered flag waves, and the Troy Lee Designs 200 is going to go to the defending champ, Robert Maleska III. Starts out Season 4 with a bang.
Last corner, there's a pack of 4 here. Bronson Stafford gets down to the inside. He's currently going to be able to get there, and I think he's going to be able to take second place away. Yeah, it's going to be Bronson Stafford that's going to finish P3. Jim Brooks. No, Bronson Stafford gets it. Bronson Stafford gets it at the line. He gets P2.
Stafford will get second. Jim Brooks in third. Gale Brooks right behind in fourth. And Eric Schaus is going to snipe a top 5. Those were drivers second on down through fifth that were in heavy save mode there after that second round of green flag pit stops, and they, along with Maleska III, were able to make it back to the checkered flag. 8 drivers in total did not have to pit in the closing stage of this race, and I think Maleska, he might be out of fuel now. He might not have enough in the tank to be able to do burnouts as he coasts it out of 4.
Yeah, I think he is. I'd agree with you. I think he's completely and utterly dry. He went a lot further than we certainly had him flagged to actually be able to get home, but he's done a phenomenal job doing that. That is a well-deserved win. He's done everything he needed to do tonight to get that car home, and he led the most important section of the race. What we were talking about at the start of the night, he got the pole, he settled at the back of the pack, and then he led the most important section of the race, the last one.
He's going to have enough fuel to pull it into victory lane there, near the pit lane at the start-finish line here on the front straightaway down the infield grass. Pole to victory here tonight for Robert Maleska III, though he didn't spend a good portion of the beginning of this race out in front. But it's the 7th time in his career that he's been able to go coast to coast. Did it 6 times last season and does it here tonight in the first race of Season 4 of the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. And I said it before, I'll say it again. This is a statement win of, hey, I'm the defending champ. If you're gonna stop me from getting back-to-back championships, boy, you're gonna have to work hard, because I'm gonna be just as dominant this year as I was 1 season ago.
Yeah, and I think statement was the right word that you said there. That is the statement. I won the championship last season. I still need to come back out here, and I still need to to get the thing across the line in first place, and he still does it. That guy knows exactly what he's doing with his IndyCar. He knows where he needs to put the car. He knows how quick he needs to run it. Most importantly, he knew the fuel numbers that he was driving to. He knew that the strategy, if this race went green, 2 stops was going to be the lap that he needed to go. But if you also watch that third and final, the second fuel strap towards the end of that race there, he also got to the laps where he knew that he was good on fuel, and he turned that wicker up. He basically said to everyone that was following him, "Catch me if you can." They could have caught him. They would have run out of fuel. So he did everything he needed to do. He broke the toe. He compromised their strategy, and that's the reason why he's winning tonight.
I mentioned the fact that 8 drivers were able to make it to the start-finish line of fuel. That was actually incorrect. Only 7 drivers crossed the line. Covey Moore ran out of fuel on the final lap, was not able to get back to the start-finish line before the race results became official. So he'll actually finish the first car 1 lap down. Still will finish in the 8th position out of Matt Wagner and Henry Bennett, who had to hit pit lane. But I'm looking at some of these names up here. Bronson Stafford, he made his first start back in the season finale last year, finished in the 8th, or make that 9th position in the Indy 500, comes back here, running the full season here in season 4, starts out the year with a runner-up finish.
Yeah, what a finish for him as well. I mean, he ran the bulk of the race down at the back end of that second pack. The pack, he was sort of stuck in terms of what was going to happen with the pack dynamics and the race dynamics. He committed to the fuel strategy, and basically whatever happened to the cars around him was going to happen to him. There was no other way. He didn't have the ability to run that high pace, keep up with the leaders, and force the pack to do the same. He just didn't have that ability. So the best result that he could really bring that car home with is definitely in that second position, because if you have a look at the difference in terms of the fuel mileage of Robert Mileska, he had the ability to run the pace that he needed to run with the fuel mileage as it was. Stafford was just kind of compromised in that. Brooks was exactly the same. Both of the Brooks boys did a phenomenal job to bring their cars home. They did everything that they needed to do, but they just could not hang with that lead pack, and that was the end result.
Yeah, great run there for both Jim and Gail Brooks. Last season, both of them only managed 1 finish inside of the top 5, and both of them start out season 4 with a top 5 finish. Eric Schaus, our winner from Pocono last season, completing that top 5. As we take a look here at the rest of the finishing results here tonight, obviously there's some drivers that looked like they might have a shot at being up here in terms of speed of winning this race. We saw Jim Herrick. He was making a charge towards the front. Charles Johnson was trying to make a charge towards the front. Both of them had to pit in the closing stages. Herrick will finish in 11th. Johnson will finish all the way down in the 19th position. And then you take a look at these guys here, Eric Peterson and Joe Agee. Obviously, they just didn't get out of the blocks. Both of them, Agee with a speeding penalty, Eric Peterson with what looked like an unscheduled pit stop for him. They're going to have some work to do here next week at Road America.
Yeah, look, they got caught in terms of things, in terms of the early start. We're talking about how Bronson Stafford's race was compromised in the early phases, just by what the pace of the pack was doing around them. I think they were attempting to commit to that fuel strategy, that alternative fuel strategy that ended up winning the race, and something's happened on pit road. They get disconnected with the pack, and their race is basically over. They were praying upon praying upon praying for a caution. Never happened. They got unlucky. Unfortunately, that's just racing sometimes. You got to commit to the strategy, which they did, and then everything has to run right. A different night of the week, maybe they're up there running alongside Robert Mileska battling for the victory. That's just how racing goes. And, turn around Road America next week and see what they can pull out.
Let's see if we can go down trackside and talk with some of our podium finishers here tonight. Let's kick things off with Jim Brooks, whose top 5 last season, by the way, was in the season finale at Indianapolis. So far with a off-season in between, he's had some pretty good runs here in these 2 races. Hey, Jim, it's Scott and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I sure do.
Well, man, first off, congratulations on getting the season started off right. 3rd place here tonight at Michigan International, but we saw a lot of fuel strategy playing out there. We know that you and the 91 were some of the last to come to pit lane during the second cycle of green flag pit stops, but just how close were you of not being able to make it to the checkered flag?
Well, I ran out going into the pits on the last pit stop, so but I actually had another lap or so left to finish the race.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was a race that I don't think we were necessarily considering was going to be a massive fuel race this evening. I pretty much put the strategy down to 4 stops at 25 laps. At what point did you know that you were going to be safe?
Early on, I tried. I just, started checking what I was going to be able to get out of it, and if I could get to 33, I was going to go for it. So I think I made it to 34 or so, and it's like fuel save all the rest of the way. I just got in behind people and drafted, and didn't challenge. Just, I was going to see if I could run it out.
If we look back at the two previous Michigan races, we've had 13 combined cautions in those two events. No cautions here tonight. Now, obviously, you guys did not know when you took the green flag that there would not be a caution at any point in this race. We saw a lot of double wide and three wide racing back in that second group. So, obviously, all of you guys were trying to pick up as many positions as you could, working your way through the field. How difficult is it to go from that type of mode to then realize, wait a minute, this thing could actually be a fuel strategy race? We may end up running all these laps under green, especially when you're doing it at a track as big as Michigan is.
No doubt. And, actually everybody, hats off. They were driving very respectfully. I mean, I didn't see hardly any, poor driving choices. A couple of people late in the run, the car got a little snappy loose and you had to be careful of that down low. I saw a couple of people had to really work not to have an issue there. But yeah, overall, it was a great race. Very well run. But I think I was in full fuel strategy most of the race. I'd say 9 cents of it.
Well, as we saw, it definitely worked out in your favor. You finished out last season with a top 5. You start off this season with a top 5. So we look forward to seeing you carry this momentum during the course of this season. We're now going to give you the opportunity for some thank you sponsors and shoutouts, Jim.
Well, definitely thank Dark Horse and Charles Teed and Eric. I mean, and Nick also. They have great league that they run, and we're partnering with them at Area 51. So shout out to everybody at Area 51 too, and you guys for covering the race. Really appreciate it.
That's Jim Brooks, P3 here tonight at Michigan International Speedway in the Troy Lee Designs 200. Congratulations, Jim. Best of luck next week at the first road course stop at Road America.
Thanks.
While making only his second start of his Dark Horse IndyCar Series career, let's talk to tonight's runner-up, Bronson Stafford. Hey, Bronson, Scott and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yeah, I got you, Seth.
All right, man. Well, I know that obviously you got a taste of what these DW12 cars do in the season finale last year in that Indianapolis 500. Here tonight, a bigger track again at Michigan. But first off, your impressions of what this car felt like now at a speedway with a lot of the pack racing that went on, a track as wide, the 5 grooves at this 2-miler.
Yeah, honestly, the track was a blast. Setup was great. The cars, you could really move them around, the lines and whatnot, and it was just a lot of fun.
I was just having a quick look over the paint schemes for tonight. I mean, a lot of work goes into those guys. You were at one stage you were thinking about running a gold and black livery. Talk to us about that one.
I was actually talking with Matt Rod on that, Scott. That car will make a run at some point, just for you.
Aw, thanks, man. So for those of you who don't know, I introduced Bronson Stafford to a livery a little while ago for a Porsche Cup car, and he's absolutely in love with it. So it's a little in-joke between us.
So Bronson, I asked this of Jim just moments ago. Obviously you guys were not aware when you took the green flag that you were not going to be seeing the yellow flag wave at all here tonight. How difficult is it to shift gears from going hard, trying to pick up positions early on, to then kind of realizing, hey, this actually could be a fuel strategy race, and kind of do the reverse strategy from end of race to beginning of race?
Yeah, starting, I think Jim started 18th, I started 17th, so we both kind of started back there, and by the time we were getting to pit stops, it just kind of, everything was just, stuck in draft and whatnot, and we were able to make it to about lap 33. At that point, I was like, if it goes caution free and I can make it to at least 66, I'll run it out of fuel entering turn 3 on the last lap if I have to, kind of thing. So it just kind of like was a quick switch once we realized that the first round that it was so close to making it. So it just kind of happened that way.
All right, so obviously we've seen that you are fast at the speedways. You had the 9th place run in the Indy 500 at the end of last season. 2nd place here tonight. Next week, first road course start of the season at Road America. What's the confidence level going into that one?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go figure the car out, I think, a little bit for Road America and see what we got. my knowledge for open wheel road courses are pretty much Formula One cars, and these aren't Formula One cars, so we'll see.
All right, well, Bronson, congratulations on getting the season started off really well. Second place here tonight. We're going to now turn the microphone over to you. Let you do some thank you sponsors and shoutouts.
Oh yeah, we got our main sponsor FRN with you guys on board, running pretty much for the FRN crowd. Almost broke the curse. P2 though. Smart cars brought a perfect engine and chassis design tonight. The car was great, really really fast. I think Mike and I are the only smart cars in the field, but it seemed to work out pretty good. Joe Snowblower, DC Sparks, SkyMotors.ca, all the things on the car that make it happen, and it was a good first night.
Bronson Stafford, runner-up here tonight in the Troy Lee Designs 200. Once again, congratulations and best of luck next week at Road America.
Thanks, Seth.
All right, last but not least, let's go down to victory lane. I think we got to get used to this, Scott. This might be a running trend this season. Did it 10 times last year, and we're doing it for the first time here in Season 4. Let's talk with tonight's race winner, Robert Maleska III. Hey, Robert, it's Scott and Seth up here in the FRN booth. You got us?
Yeah, I got you guys. How's it going?
Well, man, I said it when you took the checkered flag. Tonight had to be a statement win of, hey, if you're going to stop me from being a back-to-back champion, you're going to have to really step it up. You were able to make it on fuel. We were really questioning whether or not you were going to be able to make it, especially since you didn't have draft on that last run. Now, we obviously saw you ran out of fuel on the cool-down lap off of turn 4, but I mean, what did you have on that last run to be able to save just enough to be able to get back to the start-finish line? Because obviously draft wasn't an option.
Yeah, firstly, shout out to Troy Lee Designs for hopping on, sponsoring the series for Season 4 and HyperX to continue sponsoring us. But, yeah, I knew once we got that first run, I made it 35 laps, and so did Nick. And then I knew if I could make it 35 laps again, I'd be okay being in clean air. But as long as I made it to about 67, 68, I knew at least saving in draft, I was good to go.
I mean, the performance tonight, you won the race by 3/4 of a lap. That is a huge statement towards the rest of the season. I get the feeling that we're going to be getting to know each other on a more personal level, because we're going to be talking to each other just about every week.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm very thankful I ran the Lionheart Speedway Series on Monday, and I got a ton of practice saving fuel there, making it to the end and running out right at the line again. So, yeah, without that series, I don't think I would have saved it, because I found a few tricks and got a good rhythm there, just saving fuel.
I want to touch real quickly on those tricks because, if you look at some of these other guys that finished up inside the top 5, they started back outside of the top 15. So they were running back there basically just trying to preserve their stuff. You started up on the pole position. You were able to find your way to the tail end of that lead pack, but it kind of looked like you jumped the gun on a lot of these other guys up in that lead pack. Like you were already in the mode of thinking that this race could go green from start to finish.
Yeah, I didn't have an exact idea on what the fuel number would be. I knew from the Lionheart Speedway Series on Monday that with their setups, similar rules, you could go like 35, 36. So after 4 or 5 laps of saving, I got a very good number and knew it was doable to make it to the end. So, yeah.
Well, Robert, I mean, there's not a whole lot more to say. This seems like very familiar territory for me from last season. But man, congratulations on a dominating performance here tonight. I mean, it took maybe until the final 30 laps to see this 91 get back up there to the front. We saw you run just outside the top 5 for most of it. But man, a tremendous job on being able to save the fuel and being able to pick up this victory. We're obviously, as Scott said, we're looking forward to talking to you quite a bit down the schedule here, but we're now going to turn the microphone over to you. Let's you do some thank you sponsors and shout outs.
Yeah, thanks to my teammates, Jeff and Dylan. Have to thank the Factory Back Boys for letting me save fuel the whole run. I'll take that. And also Bud Kicker and CovyMore.com for helping the series out as well.
Well, Michigan was one of the tracks that Robert was not able to conquer last season, finished 3rd here tonight, with it being the season opener. He is your winner in the Troy Lee Designs 200. Congratulations, Robert. Best of luck. We know we're going to be seeing that 91 up at the front next week at Road America.
Yep, thanks, boys. Have a good one.
So the first race of Season 4 of the Dark Horse IndyCar Series is in the books. No surprise to see that the defending champion is out there to reclaim his crown as Maleska, by over 17 seconds, wins here tonight at Michigan. But it's interesting too because, as I said, this type of a race at this type of a track, a lot of aspects play into stock cars at a super speedway, and it kind of came down to the old adage that track position and starting up at the front doesn't always seem to be where you need to be, because we only had 2 drivers that started up inside the top 5, finished inside the top 5. 60% of our top 5 started 17th or worse.
I mean, sure, but have a look at the difference between it. If anybody else that started up within that top 5 had managed to go the same fuel strategy that Robert Maleska was on, all of a sudden it's a very different race. You've got 2 guys that are actually battling on that fuel strategy. The number and the game that was played tonight was on that fuel number on the dashboard, and that's where they kept their eyes peeled for most of the race. If anyone else, matches that, exceeds that, yeah, look, I mean, it is what it is, but like I said during the post race, just before we got to interview our drivers, you put Bronson Stafford somewhere within inside the top 10. You put Jim Brooks somewhere within inside the top 10. Gale Brooks, all of these guys, you move them up there in terms of their fuel strategy. All of a sudden, it's a very different race. They adapted their strategies late, and it was a really, really good move mid-race for them to do so. But next week, I have a feeling that they're going to think about that fuel number a little bit more aggressively, and then the next time that we actually go to an oval, they're going to come out and try and apply it.
Now, obviously, there's a lot of tracks that we were at last season that are recurring this season. Michigan moved way up the schedule to the season opener. Road America, which we're going to next week, actually held the 4th race of the season last year. And, oh, by the way, Robert Maleska went pole to win in that one. So going into that race as the defending winner of not only that race, but also the race here tonight, how much sweating is the rest of the field doing right now?
Oh, they're going to have to put in a lot of laps to really be able to get within spitting distance of Robert. I mean, you have a look at the consistency of his performance. He showed his nose a couple times early on and basically told that lead pack that he was definitely going to be fighting it, and everyone kind of forgot about him a little while. Remember what we were doing, though? We were checking in on him all the time. His position didn't move whatsoever. So I think what those guys need to do is just need to be a little bit more aware what's happening within the group, all around them. What are they trying to do in terms of their fuel numbers? I think that they just didn't consider those other options. So I think what they're going to do from now on going forward for the remainder of the season is all of a sudden a lot more practice, a lot more fuel working out, a lot more numbers, a lot more divisions, a lot more, okay, well, what happens if? Because that's what you need to do. If you're going to be successful in terms of a race strategy, we look at Robert, everyone around him basically guaranteed themselves that there was going to be that extra stop. They didn't even consider. So I think a lot of these guys are going to have to... Their pace is there. We saw the closeness throughout the qualifying. It's going to come down to that fuel battle throughout the rest of the season. I love it because it is literally the highest speed form of chess out there.
It's going to be a good one, too, because last year's Road America race was actually really competitive, all up inside of the top 5, mid-pack, even at the rear of the field. We had some good battling. The field never really got all that spread out, so certainly looking forward to next week. Road America was the first road course stop last season, but it was 4 weeks into the schedule. It's going to be the first road course stop next week for these guys, and we will be bringing you coverage of that here on the Flat Out Racing Network next Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, or make that correction, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's when the green flag will fly. Scott, it's been a great season opener, a clean season opener here, coast to coast, start to finish. It was green flag. We had a bit of a scare there when we had Johnson almost come back up the track off of pit road, but man, Robert Maleska III, as we said, just played the strategy perfectly. He's made a statement here tonight to try and be a back-to-back champion here in the Dark Horse IndyCar Series, and I appreciate you joining me in the booth.
Oh, look, man, it was exciting. There was a lot to cover and a lot of different ground and a lot of different approaches to what was effectively a very single-line kind of race. And I think we learned a lot, and I think we learned a lot for the season. So it was an absolute pleasure to be here.
Hope you guys enjoyed our coverage here tonight, and hope you join us next Wednesday night as these drivers will roll into the lefts and rights, the twists and turns of Road America Road Course. For Scott Rankin, I'm Seth Cole. We'll see you guys next week as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flat Out Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flat Out Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flat Out Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flat Out Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.